Hello, art historians. Here we are back again with another lesson on ancient Greek art. So this is the grave stele or grave stele of Hegeso. And so clearly this is a funerary piece. It's a marker for her grave. And we've talked about steles or steles or steles, that they are upright slabs of stone that are carved with some form of relief. So this is high classical. We're at the end of the classical period. We're about to enter into the Hellenistic period. And this says marble and paint. And so while there's still no paint left on it, we know that it would have been painted. It would have been brightly painted in order to stand out. And we know that it had certain decorations on it. So we're looking at a piece that is almost 6 feet tall. And 3 feet wide. And we're looking at a piece that would have been meant to mark the grave of a rich woman. And so what happens here is we're seeing a resurgence of sculpture. So this piece is attributed to Callimachus. And what's interesting about this piece is at the end of the classical period, the Parthenon was finally finished. And because so many artists, so many artisans, so many stone workers and carvers and sculptors and people that were in charge of the words and people who were in charge of the quarrying, all of those people in the majority of Greece were busy. They were all working together to make this huge Athenian Acropolis. And so after the Parthenon was finished, families could find sculptors again. And so there was a resurgence of grave markers because there were artists available to make them. And so this piece is a grave marker from the Dipylon cemetery, which is right outside of Athens. And it sits outside. Here, let me show you. This is a reconstruction. These are reconstructed pieces, but this is what it would have looked like. So the original piece is in a museum. The reconstruction piece is out here so they could protect the original piece. So clearly when we're talking about themes, funerary markers, and genre scene, we talked about genre scene. That genre in this time period means, or in art means, a homey scene, so some part of everyday life, usually in the home. So I'm going to go back to the front here. Oops, sorry. And we're going to look at this piece. So what we see is Hegeso. She was the daughter of a man named Proxenos. How do we know this? It was on the bottom of her grave stele. And it identifies her and her father, and it identifies that she died young. And it's clear that he was wealthy. And so we see here Hegeso holding her hand in what seems like a very strange way. Here is her attendant, her servant, handing her her jewelry box. And why we have this is, I'm going to go to the next thing. We get a little closer. What would have been there, and there's still evidence of it, is that Hegeso would have been holding a necklace. And so what we see is the necklace that she would have had is gone. It was there just simply in paint. But we see the scene of her servant handing her her jewelry box so that she can select her necklace. Why do you have this piece in the art history curriculum? That's an excellent question. And the reason for it is this is the end of classical Greece. We see still what we have called before wet drapery. We see this sort of more high relief. And we see sort of a dramatic sculpture. We see a return to sculpture that is done for purposes outside of just the Acropolis, because for a long time, artists were not available. They were just simply building other places. We see the depiction of everyday life. A girl picking out jewelry to wear to a party. And so with all of this, we see sort of the what's happening at the end of the classical period. It's not too complicated a piece. Our similarities can be, she's sort of similar to Nike adjusting her sandal in that wet drapery you see. She's similar to the anthropomorphic stele because it's a stele. And so we're sort of thinking about some of those funerary markers and things like that. That then moves us to the next piece, which is a big piece and one of my favorite works of art in the entire world. This piece is Winged Victory of Samothrace, also called the Nike of Samothrace, because Nike is victory. So here we're in Hellenistic Greece. And what's the difference between classical and Hellenistic? Hellenistic Greece is, the best way to describe it is, it's, one of my students once said, Hellenistic Greece is extra. It's super wet drapery. It's super expressive. It's super great at showing all of the forms that we see. It's super great at showing emotion and motion and purpose and detail. Look at the feathers. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. So this is Hellenistic Greece. This is the last phase of Greek art before the Romans take over. This was originally carved in marble because it was serving a purpose. Excuse me, I have the hiccups. I'm so sorry. So here's the deal with her and why she's such a big deal. She's 9 feet tall, and she sits at the top of the grand staircase at the Louvre. And it's purposeful, her placement. I'm going to scroll to the next one so that you can really see her. So this is at the top of her where you see her wings. This is what they assume she might have looked like. Both of her arms and her head are missing. But this is really important. We see her here at the top of the stairs on top of this pedestal, and we see that she is here where we can just see her from afar. And this shows us why she's 9 feet tall. And your theme here is the importance of location. Because when we look at her, we think about where she was found, we begin to have an understanding of who she was meant to be and why she was where she was. So we're in this really expressive Hellenistic phase. Look at that wet drapery. I mean, the wet drapery on the Nike adjusting her sandal was one thing, but this one is just masterful. Look at all of the folds here. And some of these folds in this fabric that she's wearing are paper thin. Like how they're not broken, I have wondered every time I've looked at them. So she was found at the harbor of Samothrace, which is an island. And she was buried. And what they know about her is, well, let's talk about what a harbor is. She was found at the harbor, and a harbor is a sanctuary of like a U-shaped thing where kind of like a bay where the water comes in and it has calmer water and the wind can still be there, but it's not as much as like that it would be on the open sea. And so it's sort of like a protected little area. And she was found there at the edge of the harbor. And so what they assume she was doing, why she was there, is she was there to welcome home the sailors who would go out and either protect the island or go do trade or go. So here she is. She's standing there welcoming them home. She was built onto or set onto a stone boat that would have been, air quotes, docked at the harbor. And she's there to welcome them in. So suddenly all of this wet drapery, all of this fabric clinging to her makes a little more sense because she's standing there in the harbor in the rain. She's a little bit wet. The wind is blowing. Her clothes are sticking to her. But she's there against all of this rain, against all of this wind, welcoming these sailors home. And she appears to be in motion, right? Like her arm is up, her other arm is back, anchoring her. The wind is blowing her dress. And you can almost feel the wind on her. It has so much texture. It has so much expressiveness. It was probably built to commemorate a naval battle in Samothrace in 190. So that's why they are able to give us the date 190 BCE. And it was found on the island of Samothrace in 1863, and it's in great condition. It was buried, but it's still in excellent condition, with the minus the missing arms and head, which were not found. So what's interesting about her is really that you can feel all of that water and wind. There's the possibility that that boat she was sitting on might have been in a fountain so as to additionally express water and wind, so that there might have actually been water around her feet. But she is really meant to be the embodiment of victory waiting on the coastline for you to come by. And her wings are helping her maintain her balance. Look at this piece of fabric blowing out behind her. Look at this fabric wrapping around her legs. She's even standing on her tiptoe over here. And so you really see that this is meant to really give you this expressive, moving, monumental feeling. And that is why where she is at the Louvre is perfect, because you get that sense of proportion, the sense of movement, the sense of what is, powerful about sculpture. The next two images, I'm going to go very quickly, are not actual images in your curriculum, but I really like to share them. So this is, as you can see, this is, 20th century. But I love that this is a modern example of wet drapery. You can practically see the face behind that veil. And it's really beautiful. It's in a cemetery in Vienna. And then this is what was happening in the Hellenistic period as well. When I talk about expressive, their faces are expressive. The movement of their arms, the emotion of what is happening to them. It's a really cool story. If you know anything about the Trojan horse, Laocoon, this is Laocoon. These are his sons. Laocoon tried to tell the Trojans that, don't take the horse because bad things were happening. But the gods wanted the Greeks to come in and defeat the people in Troy. And so the gods sent these snakes to devour Laocoon and his children. And I show this to you because sometimes people don't understand what I mean about expressive or whatever, but this is what I'm talking about. Look at the emotion, look at the movement, look at the things that are trying to be shown to the viewer. Look at the wet drapery here, look at the hair, it's a beautifully, beautifully designed piece, okay? The next piece in our curriculum is the great altar of Zeus and Athena at Pergamon. And Pergamon is in Turkey. So this is still Hellenistic Greece. It is that, that expressive, deep sculpture with lots of details and things like that. You have a couple of images here for Pergamon. This is one of them so that you can see the steps come up. And there are friezes, that's what that word we've used again, Frieze. There are friezes that wrap along the side of the stairwell and down along the whole outside edge of the column. So what you're looking at here is an altar to Greece and Athena. This is Hellenistic. And this is currently in the museum in Berlin. It was excavated by some German archaeologists who had an agreement with the Ottoman Empire, and they brought it back to Berlin. So that's where it is if you ever want to see it. So what you're looking at is Pergamon. So let me show you the next page. So this is the site plan for Pergamon, and you can see sort of some of these concepts of the temple to Athena. You can see various palaces here. These are military barracks. This is their own little tiny agora, so a little tiny civic center. And then this is the great altar of Zeus. So there's those stairs. And so this is that square that you're looking at right here, okay? So let's go and look at the next page. So this is your second image. This is the frieze of Athena at the great altar of Zeus and Athena. And so those are your three images: the front, the site plan, and the frieze of Athena. Okay. And the frieze that Athena is part of, 7.5 feet tall, so larger than life size. Look at that little tiny, thin, beautiful wet drapery, and 400 feet long. Because as I told you, the frieze wraps here and around here, and then around here and around there, and across around back behind the building. This is just the front part of the building. And so the general thought is that that the person who established Pergamon here, it's on a hilltop, it's near the Turkish coast. It's a really good defensive position, and so he founded Pergamon here. And so the frieze is based on the battle between the giants and the Titans. Those gods that were sort of in hiding, and the gods on Olympus. If you ever watched Hercules, the Disney movie, the giants and Titans are the ones that Hades lets loose to kind of create a whole bunch of trouble. So, and we also saw the giants and the Titans on the side of the Parthenon. And so this is meant to show the battle between the giants and Titans versus the gods of Olympus, so Zeus and Hera and stuff like that. Its real job is to sort of help underscore or underline the victory of Alexander over the Persians. We love to talk about beating the Persians. We do that, when Alexander decimates Persepolis. We talk about the defeat over the Persians when Pericles builds the Acropolis. We see it again here. So this is dramatic. It's expressive. It's super Hellenistic. If there's only one thing that you can think about that's Hellenistic: dramatic and expressive, dramatic and expressive, dramatic and expressive. What's excellent is that this great altar of Zeus and Athena also, it also had on its complex military barracks, palaces, the Agora. It also had a library. It was a huge complex. And so, it was an important military position. It was an important religious position. So on one side is the Athena side. On the other side is the Zeus side. And we're going to really talk about the Athena side. So let's go here to our picture. And here's Athena. And so what we see here is we see her face is missing, but that's okay. So we see Athena here. And we can see again this idea of the wet drapery and the expressiveness of the body and the canon of proportions. Look at the wind blowing her peplos off to the side. And so this is Nike. Okay, this is victory. But Mrs. Harmon, I thought that Athena was victory. So we're personifying victory here. So here is Athena. Here is victory, putting the crown on Athena's head, because clearly they have beaten the giants and all of that stuff. And so what you see here is this is the Earth Mother, Gaia. And this is Alcinius, Alcyoneus, one of the daughters of Gaia, one of the sons of Gaia. And Athena has him by the hair. She is dragging him up the stairs to worship Zeus. She's going to force him to worship Zeus. He's being devoured by a snake, and that's her snake. She has control of him, and she's dragging him up the stairs. And when I say up the stairs, I literally mean up the stairs. She's not on this side. She's on the side that we can't see. But she's got him by the hair, and she is right here, and she's pulling him up the stairs. It's a really cool image that we see here. She's dragging him up that stairwell. And so, she's got she's got that implied movement there. She's got her shield. If you're her, she's got her shield in her left hand. She's got him in her right hand, and she is dragging him up the stairs. And here we see Victory giving her a crown of success. And here we see Gaia that she's trampling over in fear for her son. Look at her hand. Oh no, please save my son. While her side focuses on her dragging all of these people up to be forced to worship Zeus, his side focuses on his battle with the 3 titans. And while she has one of the titans in her hand and her shield in the other hand, Zeus has a similar body position in that he has thunderbolts in his hand. So it's a really, really cool and interesting complex. It's a really, really cool and interesting group of statues. And what we want to make sure that we pay attention to is the drama of the piece. Look at them being dragged up the stairs. Look at them being, thrown, into these terrible, being forced. Here's her snake again, and here's another snake. There's lots of her snakes that she's in charge of. And it's a really, really powerful and cool piece. We have one more piece left in Greece, but it's a kind of a complex piece that's going to involve me showing you a couple of Khan Academy videos, and it's going to involve me showing you some pictures on Wikipedia. And yes, Wikipedia is fine for some things. So that last piece, the seated boxer, will be in our next video. Hope you learned something and had a good time today, and I'll see you again next time.